my background is in agricultural water management, as you can see, and I really like water management because the fish, as you know them, are quite a very special species, even from the biblical point of view. They are the only species that God gave us to really give ourselves nutrition and prosper. You can see in many biblical verses talking about fish and many portrayed from the early beginning of the gospel. So moving on to the second slide, Dr. Mtimkulu, we will just highlight exactly what pond management is and then see the limnology, the hydrobiology. So I will explain this terminology in essence, the production biology, factors that influence water quality because the fish's habitat is in the aqua. So water is very important, and it's very crucial that the water quality meets the fish's requirements. And then we look at the chemical and physical requirements of the fish, and then we look at key processes and food sources. How can you really feed the fish to grow so that essentially it can grow sustainably and provide the nutrition to the population. That slide. So when we really talk about fish, we should highlight why it's crucial. So fish, in essence, is a source of protein, very, very important type of protein you find from fish, are called chemicine, lysine. So different types of protein from animals can be classified into limiting essential amino acids. And in this regard, it means that you as an individual, you can be able to produce or synthesize some amino acids and some you can't. So that's why you will need supplementary amino acids. And with the fish, it's a very good source of protein because the protein, in essence, can be synthesized by our body. Why so? Because the fish, if you know, they have omega fatty acids, which are easily digestible, which does not contain any unsaturated fats. So that's why fish essentially is the next protein source if you look at the global demand and consumption compared to beef or poultry or the other one, pork, beef, as well as other types of sources, protein sources. So we will also highlight at the end why this is the case, because we have to say that in order to feed the fish, it costs cheaper than in order to feed the cow or pig or a poultry. So that's one key element. But the factors that influence water quality, can you go on to them? Slide number 3, please. So, Dr. M, I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Slide number 3, if you can move to it. Maybe it might be slow from my side.
I'm not sure if you can see because I'm already on slide number 4.
Okay. Slide number 3, yes. Yes.
Can you see this one?
Yes, we can. I mean, I can.
All right.
So number 3. So, ladies and gentlemen, limnology and hydrobiology, essentially we are looking at the sections of the water. In a pond, you can divide them by 3. So the first phase where the sunlight can actually penetrate until it can reach the fish, because photosynthesis essentially is very important for the fish. Then there's a second part of the pond in a layer form that sunlight can still reach. And then there is the other side, the bottom one, where sunlight can't reach because of many reasons. And that side is where usually there are kinds of fish species that can survive there. But usually you will find them at the second and the third layer. So photosynthesis, essentially, as you know, it's just light interacting with carbon dioxide and, of course, the water, which is the habitat of the fish, and then essentially allowing the phytoplankton and zooplankton. These are very special microorganisms in the water. Usually when you look at the fish food web, these are the things that they eat naturally without you having to put any food sources. So if the photosynthesis is good from that angle, then it means the fish has enough food to sustain itself. Then respiration, it's all about what the fish utilizes and then what it does take out. So carbon dioxide, we all know for all living organisms that respirate, the byproduct is carbon dioxide, and of course heat. Heat essentially can change a lot of things in the metabolism. So to say that if the heat is too much, then you will see that the respiration is also taking place quicker. So it's very important to have a balance of these two chemical reactions, or I would say natural reactions. And then the water temperature, going forward to slide number 5. Essentially, the fish can be classified as a warm water fish or cold water fish. So in a pond, because a pond can be artificially made, so to say in any land, if it's selected according to the specifications, which I will share clearly with you later on, the pond, if it's, for example, far away from any water tributary, essentially can meet the fish breeding. How so? Because it is made to make sure that the walls, the temperature in the water, they meet the fish's demand. So the water temperature is very important. So if we are talking it in a sense like the African catfish, you can grow it in a pond at your own house, or you can go to the river and then take a navigation. So navigation system, you just take the water out of the river where there is an oxbow lake most of the time in the river system, and then you create a pond then so that the inlet, the water coming from the river, can fit into the pond, and then the outlet can also go back to the very same river. But of course, there will be some pollution which can be managed if the fish are not grown intensively, because the pond system is an extensive system in terms of navigation through a river. But if you are doing it in-house at home without any inlet from a river, then definitely you will have to find a reticulation system to clean up the pollutants that come as a result of respiration. So, and of course, digestion or even reproduction. So moving to slide number 5 about water temperature. If you do have any questions, please pause and then we can go through it, because the essence of this discussion is just to share the knowledge we have and address some of the issues that you might encounter while trying to establish your own pond in any province in South Africa or in any country in Africa, if you are interested. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. I'm here to give some insights. So go to slide number 5, please, the one about water temperature.
That's the one I'm on.
Wow,
I'm not
from my side, I don't know why it's taking long to load. Okay, so the water temperature, as you can see, there are happy fish and non-happy fish. Just like us, when there's a heat wave, we start to become really uncomfortable. When there is, of course, a lot of cold or cold freeze, then we really start to become uncomfortable. So our temperature from the atmosphere has to really meet with our body temperature. So regards with the fish, it's the same. So a fish needs the right amount of water as well as the right type of temperature, so it can be able to move, becomes active and able to breed. So normally with the African catfish, the temperature should be above 13 degrees and shouldn't exceed 30 degrees. So if one of the two is breached, then you will have a problem. It's either going to become inactive, and then as a result, there can be a fish kill as a result of the temperature and as a result of other pathogens as well. So the temperature has to be kept at the right boundary or at the right condition. And to do so, you will need to obviously have thermometers that can work in the water and measure the temperature at different sample points, because we know that in a pond, the temperature is not the same in every pond. But to optimize the right conditions for the fish, then one has to be able to know what temperature is there and influence the temperature. I will share some of the practices that you can do to influence the temperature. So now let's see what you really need to feed the fish, because in its natural environment, a fish is really it is active and it is able to find its own food sources. So in such a way that if you look it in the ocean, the fish usually don't have less water. It doesn't die because there is no water or food, but usually it is other diseases that are new, or even predators, or even overfishing. So that's why the fish, in any sense, it's sustainable if it's grown in pond, because the maximum sustainable yield always reach a stable equilibrium, and as a result, when you utilize them with proper breeding, you are able then to supply the population demand the food nutrition in a stable way without depleting the resources in the pond, of course. So fertilization, slide number 6, it's not showing on my side. If you can click again, Dr. Mtimkulu.
Let me just check. Colleagues, I just want to check something. I don't know if the Gift is the only one who can't see the slides.
Yeah, I am also experiencing the same challenge with Gift. The slides only show it when you do it this way, where you just click on it. But when you move it on a slideshow, it does not move.
Yeah.
Like right now, what do you see? Can you see anything?
Yes, I can see slide number 6, fertilization, organic, inorganic. Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Perfect. So yeah. Let's talk more about fertilization. So we say that when you are feeding fish, you are actually doing fertilization. So more or less, when you are growing crops, you feed them with organic material or inorganic material. So fish essentially can digest both organic and inorganic. So we start with the organic one. So the organic material can be animal feed, can be worms too for protein source. It can be the phytoplankton itself or the zooplankton, because why fish are essentially fast growing animals is because if you look at their taxonomy, most of them are predators. So it means they eat food very, very aggressively, and they grow the body mass very well when they are supplied the right feed. So let's start with the feed conversion ratio for fish. So a fish is 1:1. So one biomass you feed the fish is going to create another one biomass. So it's very efficient in terms of nutrients. When you go to poultry, which I'm sure before we had some participant or facilitators talking about poultry, for example, chicken, the feed conversion ratio is around 2.7. So a little bit higher with fish. So it means that the one who has feed, for example, soybean can really have a good FCR for poultry. So to say Brazil has, for example, 2.5. That's why in the market you see all the Brazilian chicken. It's not because they have the biggest technology, it's just about the feed, especially the organic feed. So they have a lot of good, it costs less for them to feed poultry. So with fish, it's really good that the FCR is low and the growing period is also low. It's not like the livestock, for example, sheep, goats. So the inorganic one is the one that are made by the industry. The uptake is very good. However, the challenge with the inorganic one is the fish can modify certain elements and then some it can't. So which means if the fertilizer itself has some substances that are not biodegradable, then the humans, for example, mercury, then the humans can be able to be exposed to it, which can really be a havoc in terms of disease and spread. So that's why it's very good to make sure the pond, if you are doing inorganic, it's thoroughly cleaned and the traceability or the quality assurance meets the sanitary standards. So those phytosanitary standards have to be met. So one thing that's challenging with the organic fertilizer is that if you take, for example, the poultry waste and you feed fish, the dry matter content has to be really stable. Because if it doesn't, then the feed, for example, like the catfish, it wants to eat this feed on the bottom of the water, not on the or not submerging. So with the organic one, you might have a challenge creating pallets and making sure you keep the dry matter content. So, however, both fertilizations are profitable. It just depends on what your consumers are demanding and, of course, their taste. So over to you, Dr. Mtunkulu, slide number 7 about feed, just to make sure we thoroughly interrogate the feed itself. What kind of feed do we have and what kind of fish eat what kind of feed? So on slide number 7, is there any questions or any Colin, I see your hands up, go for it.
Yes, I'm hearing you talking about the catfish. I don't know about the other types like the tilapia.
Yeah.
Are they feeding the same?
In a pond, they different. So you will see that the tilapia, it likes to interact. They like groupings, so that because obviously they are all predators, so it is good to feed them from the submerging one so that they can see, because they also don't have the a good vision, especially if the water is not clean. So the different types of tilapias, you can definitely choose according to which type of feed you have. So you have that luxury to say, for example, you will go for a submerging one or bottom feeding. But I would say the best is always the submerging feed, because you will want to see if they are really taking the feed, and then so that you don't waste the feed as well or even pollute the pond. So I would say choose a species of tilapia that essentially feeds on submerging feed.
Okay, no, thanks very much.
You're welcome. So now the feed, we have the common carp, the marine shrimp, rainbow trout. Let's just put it into context of South Africa. The common carp is really one of the best species you can do grow for South Africa, because I know for sure our people love angling. So angling is a type of sport where you go fish. You don't necessarily eat the fish, but you take pictures, because the carp can really go to 50 kilogram, can go to 100 kilogram. You know, it's a species of fish that can really grow big, and it's a bottom feeder. So it means even the water not clean, it can still survive. So a common carp, really, it's a very good species. And of course, it can also be a trophy hunting species, meaning if you sell one common carp to the Japanese, you will make so much money, because for them, they keep it as a heritage. So the marine shrimp, if you notice them, the marine shrimp are also like premium products. So you can keep them in a pond as well. They are good. And they really like the soluble feeds, the one that don't dissolve quickly in the water. And then the rainbow trout, they really want a lot of moving water. So they like fishways or gateways, because for them, they really need a lot of dissolved oxygen. I will explain what dissolved oxygen is. And then it is very important that the feed meets the fish requirement. So that's a take from this. So all of this feed you can buy from the shops like Farmer's Choice. You can buy them and grow your fish, and then as a return you sell your fish to the market, which usually in South Africa, because the agricultural market is not regulated, so you mean you can sell it even in the free market. So now we move to slide number 8 about aeration. So I just want to highlight why aeration is very important, especially for the rainbow trout. So aeration essentially is how much you rotate the water so that there is more oxygen. Oxygen essentially allows the fish to respirate, and then in turn allows the fish to reproduce. So when you have fingerlings, because sometimes you don't breed the fish in the same pond, you can take the fingerlings from another hatchery, and then when you put your fingerlings in there, you must make sure that the dissolved oxygen is quite enough. So for African catfish, a minimum of 3 milligrams per liter or 3 ppm of dissolved oxygen is very good. So now there is a contradiction here. I'm sure one can tell. The moment you put feed in the water, because of biodegradation, the oxygen is lost. So how can then one make sure that while you feed the fish, you don't deplete the same oxygen? So the very same thing that we said, diffusing air or aspirator, essentially allows the balance between the chemical oxidation or the biological oxidation to be in balance so that the fish get oxygen, as well as the biodegradable feed also gets oxygen for the microbe. So that's why it's very important to have aeration. If you don't have aeration in a pond, supposedly because you don't have the energy, you can do a lot of tricks. So some people will just put a hole underneath the particular pond and then recirculate the water. So use some slanting or gravity, and then when the water is moving, the oxygen, the dissolved oxygen increases. So dissolved oxygen and temperature are conversely related. The moment you have high temperature, the dissolved oxygen is going to be low. So that's why it's always optimal to keep the temperature between 10 minimum and 30 maximum, so that you don't have low dissolved oxygen. So slide number 9, water exchange. If again there is no pending questions, I will clearly move to number 9. So water exchange, really, this is what makes the Norwegian interested into developing ponds, especially ponds in South Africa along the coastal areas like Durban, Jeffreys Bay, Knysna. Similar technology, it's all about water exchange. So what happens is you go to the ocean and then you create your ponds. Then these ponds can allow the particular cages, like for salmon. So why is it important to make it next to the coast where there is a river? Because these fish are called pelagic. So they normally have a growing season in the ocean. When it's time to breed, they go to the salt, away from the salt water. They go to the fresh water, which are the rivers, and then they lay their eggs there. And then the season comes and the new fingerlings are born, then they move back to the ocean. So these fish are very special, like the salmon, very expensive because the growing technology is normally now owned by the Norwegian people. And if you want to so much take it and duplicate it in South Africa, because you will have to buy some patents from them. But if you come with your own raceway, for example, you can still be able to grow fish in a pond, a man-made pond or artificial pond. So the trout raceway, as I said, they like DO that is high. You make them like fishways or raceway, and then they can jump up and down, moving from one pond to the next. And in doing so, then the body mass increases, because the more active they are, the more they're going to utilize the feed. So the carp, like you can see the carp cages, this is in Indonesia. It's quite a very big business as well. So the water you can see is not really clean, but the carp can obviously tolerate low quality water. So catfish raceway, they can really be good as well. So it's just always about giving them the enough oxygen. So now let's go to the classification of the aquaculture systems, slide number 10. Of course, if you have a question, please raise up your hand and we can tackle it as we go. So aquaculture system, really, it's all about salinity, because the saline water, for example, from the ocean, these fish species have gills that are able to breathe in water. So how it does breathe in water is quite remarkable. Maybe this is one reason why God blessed the man with a fish in the beginning. So the fish has gills that can drain the salt from the water, and then so as a result, we have the ones that are just in the sea. And then the other thing is what producer-consumer relationship. If you want to have a fish business, what do consumers want? Consumers obviously want a fish that is boneless. And is it possible to breed a fish that's boneless? Because we know that most families have kids, and if you leave kids to each fish, is very dangerous. And of course, they want fish that is tasty. They want fish that looks good. The color is very important. And because some of the feed contains carotene, you might be surprised that you find a salmon that looks yellow because what it ate. So if the consumers are good with that, you can go with it. The culture unit as well, the species, what kind of species are you gonna choose? If it's a salmon, it's good for you. If it's a Bermuda species, very expensive, but the growing, it's long as well, but you know, the demand is up there. Cavalia, I'm sure you know it from France as well. It's a very good species. Then management intensity, whether you are going extensive or intensive. So there are many ramifications if you decide to do any of the above. So salinity, slide number 11. So salinity, really, we are looking at the water as low salinity, the streams, the rivers, the ponds that you make at your own place. Salt water has high salinity, that's ocean water. Brackish water, you know, salinity between fish and salt water. So estuaries. So you see estuaries like mangroves in Durban and then the lagoons in Knysna. So really there you can get very, very rare fish species, which because of protection, you can't really fish unless you have the license for sure. But in any saline water, you can really grow fish. So salt essentially is sodium, calcium, all the ions that can dissolve in water. The fish can really tolerate them and grow in such a way that they meet the consumer demand, which I have highlighted is color, taste, boneless or not boneless. So salinity is not really a problem. Over to slide number 12, water quality testing. So suppose you now start a fish business at home. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to ask a question.
Yes.
Here, when you were talking about the different, I'll just say different structures, or those cages, you spoke about the one you mentioned, the ones that I think they put in the ocean, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I don't remember what you called it.
Yeah.
So like they put the structure there and then put the fish inside, or they just put the structure and then the fish from the ocean goes into the structure? Like, how does it work?
Yes, that's a very good question. So they have to make sure that they put the structure and they put the fish and protect the fish from interacting with other fish from the ocean. Because, for example, there's salmonella, which is a disease of salmon. So usually the free-ranging fish in the ocean have it in low amount. So now if they interact, this one that are bred inside the cage, if are interacting with the ones that are free roaming in the ocean, then the salmonella concentration in disease form, it can get high. So they have to protect it. to make sure that they are not escaping. That's another reason, because once they escape, then you will lose your stock. So they have to protect them. So one example that I will mention is called Ocean 4. So it's a big project from the Germans, I think the Japanese too. It's one of the biggest intensive fish culture in the world. You can check them on Google. So what they really do is they put a huge structure that moves around the ocean. It's not staying in one condition, so that the fish can get high DO, as well as making sure that they can also get other phytoplankton in the ocean. So they don't necessarily feed them alone, but they also expose them to other small fish like the anchovy, the sardine. The sardine in South Africa is a small fish that you can culture as well in the ocean or in a pond, but it's more profitable in the ocean. So that is to answer you in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you.
So Mahalela, I can see you are raising your hand up. Go for it.
Thank you. Nice presentation, Mr. Gift. I'm not sure if the question is related, but I would like to know if you have any knowledge as to why there is an increase in tinned fish, like the pilchards. I've seen the prices. I don't know whether it's the feed costs that are contributing to those high inflation costs.
That's a very good answer. So, I mean, answering a question at the same time, because you highlighted the market demand. The market demand for fish is increasing. Is the input cost for fish production, especially the wild catch, because the sardines, like the pilchards, are wild catches in most of these cases. So the right answer to tell you now is that overfishing has created a lot of depleted stocks in the wild. So now, because they are very scarce, these sardines and anchovies, so the price has gone up because of scarcity, not necessarily of the high input cost, because the very same technology that they've been using since 1980s, it's being used now. So there's no reason why the technology is skyrocketing the prices. So it's just a matter of scarcity, because most of the stocks, as I've said, they've really been almost depleted. That's why most areas where like anchovy was farmed or even caught, they've put them under the MSC. So this is the Global Alliance of Conservation. So to say that they will not allow fishing to happen for the next 5 years until this situation improves. So we call it the trophic cascading. So you have the bigger fish eating the smaller fish, but the smaller fish should not be depleted so that the bigger fish has food. So when the trophic cascading happens, then the agencies that are international have to intervene. So at the market now, the fish price of sardine is not because the canning is more important, it's just because it is becoming more scarce. These huge barrels that go in the ocean, they take time to get the fish, like compared to before. So I hope that answers your question. But as I said, your answer was also there. It's just because of the demand and supply.
All right, thank you, understood.
So Colin, I think if you have a question, go for it.
I wanted to check the story about the crayfish. What's happening with it?
Yeah, crayfish actually is one very important species. So some people classify it as pelagic, so it can really survive in the ocean and in ponds. But I will say that it's a luxury fish because it's a freshwater and it's a crustacean. So crustacean species are normally called lobsters. I'm sure you know them. The shrimp are also like that. So quite interesting. This kind of fish, they have pain receptors. So They are able to read pain. They are able to experience a range of emotions like fear. So they are very much playful. So which means that some ponds that are kept for tourism, they like to put up these crayfish. So to make sure that tourists enjoy, somebody mimicking whatever emotion they pose. So yeah. So that's as far as I can tell you. I haven't tested one yet because I don't think we have a lot of lobsters in South Africa. And of course, the price is always high. So yeah. Are you answered? You can really check if the crayfish can make tears. I'll leave you with that as a homework. It will be quite interesting that it is called crayfish, but one has to know whether they have tears or not. So yeah. We move on to water quality testing. So if you have a pond, you have to do it daily or weekly. So basic test, you can buy the kits, and then quick, it's not expensive. You measure for the temperature, you measure for the dissolved oxygen. You also measure for the chlorine. Chlorine, it's a good water purifier. At the same time, it's also a polluter. So you need to know whether it is in high concentration or not. So you need to see if you're doing extensive, meaning in an open land, very huge. You need to see if your testing is not time consuming. So you also need to check for your heavy metals because some of them are essentially um, uh, prickling in water, which means the fish can take them from water as they are, and they are not biodegradable, so they are bioaccumulative. So which is why eating fish more than what is required. Normally the WHO recommends one to eat a fish per week, once per week. The heavy metals can really be a problem, especially mercury. It can be a really problem because when you eat fish too much, it can degrade your teeth. So yeah, so you need to make sure that you have a facility that meets the fish requirements. So the one that I favor a lot is called a reticulation air system. So it's able to use the same amount of water to feed different types of fish over and over without even depleting water. It's very efficient, but it's energy intensive because in order to reticulate the water, you need alternative source of energy, not ISCOM, because if the DO goes down, you have 4 hours, the fish will die after that. There is no, and it's not reversible. So if you are doing this RAS system, you need to have other sources of energy. So yeah, the water quality testing is doable, and you don't need a scientist. You can just get the device or test tools or kits, and then you do it over and over. And then yeah, from there, it's very good. Kopano, I see your hand is up. If you have any question, go for it, Kopano. Okay, so we move to slide number 13. Dr. Mtimkul cannot consume homogeneity, so we can't assume that everything in the water is the same. So we have the sun, we have clouds, we have wind, we have the surface, and then irradiance is the type of energy that can get into the water but be irradiant. So it can be reflected, refracted, so really some physics there. So what it means is turbidity essentially can be influenced by a lot of quality of the water. So turbidity is how much see-through can you see in the water. Like after a rain, the river really changes the color. So there are many elements that are in the water. And a fish doesn't like water that's not clear because it gets stressed. And a fish stress usually makes it lose the body size. So the water can move in laminar flow or upwelling, so or turbocline. So that doesn't matter how the water is moving. The only important thing is when the water is really moving at the speed. If it's not too fast, then the fish can move and interact with the others because they are very social species. The thermocline is where the water essentially has enough oxygen and the sunlight can still get there, but not in high amount. So the homogeneity is not there in the water. So that means you can't apply the same amount of feed at the same place in the pond. Some places you will have to put more feed, some of course you will have to put less. And now let's go to slide number 14. That actually summarizes the whole presentation, if I may call it. And then with this one, you will just get to see how to do it in a very efficient way. So the physical zone within an aquacultural pond are the limnetic, the middle one, the benthic zone where the oxygen is very less, the littoral zone, as I said, this is where the fish is literally found most of the time. So in the littoral zone, you have a lot of aquatic plants. They are also very important to just clean the water, especially reeds. So phytoplankton is in the limnetic zone. So phytoplankton, zooplankton are the lower classes of the fish. So benthic zone, you find a lot of crayfish or benthofauna. So this is the indicator zone. If your pond is doing well, there are some worms that will be there and they will represent if the pond is clean. If not, then the worms won't be even in the benthic zone. So the most important thing is you have a bacteria, then it utilizes the nutrients and CO2, and then you have a phytoplankton, which essentially needs the sunlight, and as an exchange, it excretes oxygen. Then you have a zooplankton. Then the fish eat the zooplankton and crayfish, and then again the decaying matter going back to that. So zooplankton and phytoplankton are your protein source. So that is why then it makes sense to grow fish, because when you feed fish, it's not only getting the protein from the feed alone, it also gets it from the phytoplankton and zooplankton. So hence the FCR in fish, as I said, is 1.1 or 1:1 in a minimum form. So in some cases it can be 0.8, so which means you are really feeding the fish less than it can produce. So that's the one that day. So any questions from here? If not, then we can move to the next. So one may ask themselves, then how tall will be a pond? How much in length? So I would say minimum 2 meters. You can make it more than that, but minimum 2 meters. And at the benthic zone, you need to not put concrete, but you need to put a clay layer. The clay layer is very important so that the water can drain, but at the same time not drain too much. So, and of course the other benthic species, as I said, like the worms, can also survive in the clay, so that the fish, the bottom feeders, can also get nutrition from there. So yeah, slide number 15.
Sorry.
Yes.
So the worms you're talking about, like your normal earthworms?
Yes, normal earthworm, but this one is special because they survive in water as well as in clay or in soil. So we call them indicator worms. So some of them are utilized by the fish, some of them are not. So, but they are just good to put the aquatic balance of biodiversity in the water, because the way the aquatic ecosystem is so diverse, it's amazing to see that if you have worms on the bottom of the pond, what do they play? So the decay or the feed that is not utilized by the fish can become toxic. So suppose that you have a high protein source, say 777 NPK, and then the fish only utilizes 555. The 2 is left in the pond, and it degrades to become nitrate or ammonia. So when it degrades, then it can be toxic for the fish. The same feed that you feed it can kill it. So that's why the the bottom layer, the benthic zone, if it has these worms, then they can neutralize that feed before it even decays further. So that's one reason. So the relationship between the dissolved oxygen and the daylight. So in the morning, sunrise, you will have your dissolved oxygen just around 4 ppm, and then it goes up during the midday or sunset. Yeah, before sunset, it goes up and reach an equilibrium. So now you will have a dense boom. And then the problem with when dissolved oxygen is high, you also have algae blooms. So algae, you know, some of them are toxic, some of them are good for the fish. So now it's important to know when you do your aeration, you can do it at sunrise, and you can do it at sunrise. Sunrise and sunset. Sunset, you don't need it. So you can do it at night or in the morning, your aeration, depending on, of course, what type of pond you have. If you have a navigation pond next to the river, then you don't need any aeration because the water, the inlet comes with it, and then, yeah, it aerates it. So the bottom side has low dissolved oxygen, so normally cool. The upper side has high dissolved oxygen. So you need to know how much is the stock rate of the fish based on the amount of feed you have, based on the amount of space you have. So if you are going intense, you can put many fish species in a square meter, but if you are going extensive, you just let them roam around and have enough. So the challenge with fish again is when there's not enough feed, they become cannibalistic, so they can eat each other. So that's a very huge problem, because now you can end up losing your stock. So it's very important that you keep the feed available, but don't overfeed them, because they can become lazy and start gaining a lot of fat instead of the muscles. So in essence, the alga boom is something you have to make sure you don't put much. You regulate or you control. So pH also can influence the alga boom. So if the pH is high, so for example, if there's biodegradation of the feed, the pH can really go up, and then that's why it's good to drain the unutilized feed out of the pond so that the pH remains constant, and then the fish can grow in such a way that you can be able to harvest it. So slide number 16. So just to summarize what we said about the temperature, so they have preferences and there are lethal thresholds. So it's really difficult to maintain or control temperature. So it's good to match the temperature with the fish that you have. So as I've said, with the African catfish or channel catfish, you have between 11 and 30. So the dissolved oxygen, normal 10 to 15 milligram per liter or ppm. So these are normal fish. Warm water fish, they have above 3 mlg per liter, like the catfish. Cold water fish, they are above 5 milliliter per milligram per liter. So like the salmon. So as I've said, the decay of organic matter can cause fish kills. So to say the nitrate and ammonia comes from the decay of OM. So it's very important to drain it or have some worms, bottom feeder worms that can utilize it. So in a nutshell, this is why it's important to try and control these parameters. With the kits that you have, you can test them continuously and then make sure that they are in order. So the next one will be pH, and then we will talk about the herbicide runoff, which is a very big problem, especially for the navigated fish ponds next to the river. Those ones are number one kill. pH can be treated with chemical addictions. So pH between 6 to 9 warm fish is good. pH between 5 and 9 for the cold fish is good. So Lower pH, which is high in acidity, can really stunt the fish, so it can grow to become small. And you know, consumers, when you show them a fish in the market or in the retail shop, they need to see the size as normal. If it's stunted, then they don't take it, even though it's highly nutritious or healthy, they wouldn't. So aquatic herbicides in the same pond, you have some herbicides or some herbs that can kill the fish. So you have to make sure when you kill these weeds, you get the permit to do so, and the label is read carefully. If you are keeping them organically, you go inside the pond yourself, you remove them by hand, which is what I favor most of the time. It's labor intensive, but it's way healthier. So the herbicide runoff from the agricultural place can be very lethal, and so normally they are high after the first rain. So that's why it's very important to keep your pond, have some levees so that the runoff does not get into your fish. So now we have 3 minutes left for the session. I would like to conclude with the nutrient management, and Dr. Mtimkul will avail these slides. So if you guys have any other questions regarding the other stuff that will follow, they are more or less the same thing. It's just maybe just highlighting exactly what to consider and what not to consider, so that we get into that business of fish pond, because as I said, the next protein source in the world now will come from fish. You have to not think about beef or soya bean, because as I've highlighted before, the cost of producing the others is more than fish. Fish is the easiest and cheapest and more healthiest one. So yeah, and the breeding programs are growing heavy now. Kopano, before I conclude, go for your question.
Okay, thank you for the good presentation. So I wanted to ask a question regarding you said it's salmon or salmonella?
Salmonella, the disease. Yeah.
Yeah, the disease. So how do you control the occurrence of this salmonella in the caged fish, except for separating them from the free roaming ones in the ocean?
Yeah. So really, it's a very important question. I would say the first thing is just change your stock. If you feel that the salmonella is there, you need to change your stock so that you get a stock that is not having it. So that's the first one. But of course, it depends on whether it's affecting it at the fingerling stage. It's easy to do that. But if it's probably 5 days before they reach the market, yeah, you have a huge challenge. One will say vaccinate the fish so that they don't get salmonella. Yeah, it depends again whether you are satisfied organic or not. So if you are not satisfied organic, you can do it, vaccinate them, and then yeah, in that case you won't have any exposure to salmonella. And then the other control measure is obviously during the breeding stage, you have traceability or quality control or quality assurance. So in this case, if there's an outbreak of one, then you just stop the whole process. You get new fingerlings. So it has to be a very strict measure. So what I've noticed, what they do in the Norwegian countries, to prevent the salmonella, they breed new species that are resistant to it, so that they go in the lab and then somehow work with the eggs and breed some fingerlings that are resistant. And then yeah, in that way it solves the whole thing. So those are the current ways to do it. But in South Africa, because we normally import, so we don't really get exposed to it, because we usually expose the ones that are resistant or the ones that have been grown without any exposure to this disease. So this salmonella can also be in poultry, so that's why it's important to avoid the horizontal transmission. So to say that if it's in poultry, you shouldn't get this feed from the poultry. So you can't then feed the manure of the poultry to the fish. So yeah, I think that's how you can do it in essence. So it can also be in seafood. Yeah.
Sorry. So another one is how is the quality of fish controlled, the meat?
Yeah. So if you are in a pond, the pond supposedly in your farm without any navigated water. So the way you will control the quality of the meat is to balance the feed intake. So we know that, for example, phosphorus, potassium, they aid the fish not in the muscle development, but in also the utilization of other feed. So the feed you give them, the ones that are high in energy, because did you know, for example, that fish is the only species that can take energy and convert it into protein? So you have to balance then giving it the protein versus the energy. So if you want it to gain as fast as you can give it more energy and less protein so that it can gain fast. And then at the end of the day, the meat taste will not only be muscular, but it will also have the fatty acids. So that's one aspect. So in the feed, so the spacing you provide, so if they move more, the muscle texture can be really influenced. The tenderness of the fish essentially depend on the quality of water. So if the water is high in dissolved oxygen and the water is clear all the time, then the fish can really have a good tenderness. So when you not cook it, but put it in oil, you will see the tenderness is, even though it's crunchy, but there's still some juicy part that are left when you eat it. So those are the aspects. So it's mainly in the management practices how you influence the taste. So
Okay,
I have another person, I think.
Can I ask?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to check the number of days or how long does it take for the fish from fingerlings to the time of market? How long does it take from that? And again, how do you control the temperatures in the water? Are there any tools that one can use to do that?
Yes. So the first question, if I understood, was how long the fingerlings tends to fish, and then how long until they go to the market. So usually we start with fry, which can grow to 10 to 15 centimeter, and then it's called a finger because normally the size it's the size of the finger, the human finger. So that's why it's usually called a fingerling. So if you are stocking it in a table fish production pond, so that means you're taking 30 to 6 days for the fry to grow until it reaches the fingerling. Then the 60 days after, you will have 3 months to 6 months, depending on the fish species, until it can reach the market maturity. And then from there, obviously, once you harvest the fish, you have to, do some value addition. So remove some other parts, wash it, pack it. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but that's also value addition because the price of a fingerling, let's say the African catfish, I have a production plan here. I think Dr. Mtimkulu, you can send them as well. So it has the specs as to how much it can cost, the fingerling. So it will be like 5 rand each fingerling. And then the moment you sell the fish at the market, it can be like 30 rand. You know, if it reaches the right size, supposedly a size. So normally the fish reaches a size of 300 grams, then the consumers can utilize it. So if it is 1 kilogram, it can cost around 30 rand from having spent just 5 rand. So it's really a good business in that sense. However, the only challenge with it is just to manage the pond and making sure that you have the right stocking rate and the diseases are not affecting you. And then once you have that in control, then you are able to really scale up and start selling in the market.
Gift, I think he asked 2 questions.
Okay, I didn't get the second part. Yeah.
The second one was about the how to control the temperatures in the pond.
Okay.
Yeah.
So aeration is one of them. If you have a closed system, you can use these small devices. Sorry, this like plastic materials. So what it does is you put some bacteria in them to feed the fish without those bacteria. So that the fish can maintain their inside temperature and be able to move randomly, so that when they move, then they are not stagnant. The water is essentially moving, and whatever poo, I can call it poo or excreta, then it's also going on the surface. So you remove the poo, because usually you want your heat in the water to stay, so that the temperature can stay. So you can have an aeration, so where you pump oxygen into the pond, or you can recirculate the water. There's a second option. Or instead of just throwing the feed inside the water, you get the plastic media, which can allow you to have the feed onto it so that it increases the fish's movement. At the same time, then the temperature can be stable, because the moment the fish are moving, they are also coming in with the oxygen. So they are making sure that the water is not stagnant. Because obviously the secret with water, the moment it moves, then the temperature stays more or less the same, because as I said, the dissolved oxygen also has a relationship with the temperature. So, but I would say in a nutshell, just do aeration. You can pump air into the pond, or just do this winds things. You just take the bottom side of the water, you change it up, At the same time, you're not disturbing the fish for sure, because this aeration can be like 1 hour maximum, and then the temperature at that point, it's going to influence. So if you have thermal water, which thermal water is like a hot spring,
my boy.
then So who else has a question? I'm sorry about the time, guys. From my side, I think we are done. We just can address the questions now.
Yeah, I saw Kefas.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to know, when is the breeding season of the fish, and then during breeding season, is it necessary to increase the feed intake?
Yes, so usually the pond managers are not breeding in-house or in the same pond. So that's why you don't want to have a conflict of interest, because the same fingerlings can be eaten by the fish itself. As I said, it's a very cannibalistic or predator species. So you take the fingerlings from the hatchery or the breeding guys, then you put them in the pond any time of the season, except in the winter, especially if you have colder winters, then you can't have breeding season. So in all the warmer seasons, it's a breeding seasons for the fish. If then you have a closed pond, the breeding season is all year round. So that's it in a nutshell. Just to answer the previous guy also, if you have a hot spring or thermal bath or water, you can connect it to your pond. Then in that way, you can control the temperature as well. So it's the easiest way to really keep the water warm if you have colder winters. So in case now you have supposedly ice on the pond, it's okay to just make sure you take off your fish, and then you try to de-ice it to make sure that the fish does not get extremely cold. But that instance only, I think, happens in Europe where there is snow and then the whole pond maybe 1 meter above it's frozen. Some fish can still tolerate it, some can't. So in that case, you will have to have a heating system. But in South Africa, I don't think that's the case. I have Lee Breezy. Your hand is up. Go for it.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Since we are on this slide of nutrient management, I just want to link it with that one of the, you were having a tool there for checking water quality. For instance, like I understand that like checking your turbidity, your pH and salinity, it can be
Yes.
very much simple just to monitor the water quality. But in
Yes.
terms of nutrient management, do you do analysis more often as like you are doing when you are checking your pH and whatever, or there are some models that you use to can monitor the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus in your water? For instance, maybe using your SWOT model for prediction of nitrate that can be increasing with time.
Yeah. So that's a good one, because as you say, nitrate, phosphorus can really, in high concentration, can be problematic. So we use automated devices. You just put them in the pond, and then they tell you every day if there's an alarm. They ring it, and then you intervene as it is, because this nitrate is very toxic, and usually it takes several hours, then you have a fish kill. So it's very important to monitor them automatically, so on a continuous basis. So yeah, for these ones, you don't have any layover. So it's not the same as the other ones like pH, the pH you can do daily, weekly, sometimes subjectively, just by seeing the color change, because obviously if there's algae, you can see the water starting to change. And then now you start realizing, oh, the fishes are not now moving as fast as they were. There's something wrong. So with the NP one, you have to check every day with an automated device.
Okay. On a practical point of view, for someone who's gonna be practicing this fishing industry and whatever, the equipment of monitoring nitrogen and this phosphorus, the phosphates actually and the nitrates, are they expensive? The device, is it that expensive, or there are other ways that one can use just to try to monitor this nutrient?
Yeah. So like this one's called ultrasonic equipment. So it's a quick sonic. It's not expensive. You can find it for $20, fully automated. So yeah, and it can really take 5 years while in use. So they are not really expensive. It could be a case where now you have a really huge pond, then you will have to buy more of these devices. But again, because of the input cost versus the sales, you will still make a profit considering how much the fish cost in the market. So yeah.
All right. No, thank you very much. I'm answered.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to leave it here with love. I'm grateful that we had this discussion. I hope some of you are going to try this pond management, because as I said, it's a very niche market, especially for us Black people in South Africa. Why so? We didn't have the skills before. Somehow we also didn't have the knowledge or the land. So you can start with a 1 hectare pond, and you can certainly start servicing the local people, and you don't have to go with the big fish. Somehow you can start doing your sardines, the small fish, which are easy to grow. And as I said before, they can not only just utilize your feed, they also use the phytoplankton, which is available from nature itself. So yeah, all the best in your endeavors. If you need any help in this project, I'm here, I'm all yours. Dr. Mtinkulu, say thank you so much, sir, for the invitation. I hope everyone's going to enjoy their evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gift. Yes, Kopano, I'd like to believe that it's a legacy hand. Eh? Okay. Yeah, I think it wasn't.
Oh, the hand is still up.
Yeah, it's still
no,
up.
it's not the one.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, Gift, thank you very much, man, for such an informative, presentation. Yeah, thank you for your time and for everything. And colleagues, I think we have come to the end of our webinar this evening, and this is actually, I think it's our second last webinar for the year. And the next one will be on the 7th of December. And yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, that will be the very last one, I think. Yeah, but that is still going to be confirmed in the next week or so. Thank you. Have a very good evening and enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.